You're listening to the Focused and Fearless podcast. I'm your host, Heather Angel, and I've been helping people tune into what lights them up and increase their personal and professional performance for over a decade. Now I'm best known as a high-performance coach, helping entrepreneurs like you cut through the noise and create a business and life on your terms. If you're ready to step out of struggle and discover how simple it can be to create a fulfilling, joyful, and successful business without all the overwhelm and long hours, you're in the right place.
Hey, beautiful people. Oh my gosh, right. So first off the bat, this episode is going to be a little bit more of a story, a bit of a share from something that's happened in my business, in my life, that I really wanted to share because I'm seeing it happening with a lot of the conversations that are happening on social media and also with some of my clients. And it's all about how I broke a commitment that I'd set for myself for 12 months and I broke it within 7 weeks, which is a tricky thing for me to share because I am very, very committed. If I say I'm going to do something, I will do it. And this was something I spoke about on social media. I made like a big thing about it. And then 7 weeks into it, I went back on what I committed to. So I wasn't too sure whether I was going to share, but I am going to share because I want you to know that I'm being 100% real the whole time. And I make mistakes. I make decisions from the wrong place, from the wrong energy. And that's exactly what I'm going to go into today. And I think a lot of you are going to be able to resonate with where I was coming from when I set that commitment. And maybe you can review, especially as we're coming to the end of the quarter, you can maybe look and review at the 12-month goals and commitments you've set for yourself. But before we dive into that, I do want to be completely transparent that I'm not 100% sure when you will be listening to this, when I'll be releasing this episode, because it's the 9th of March 2020 and Britain is now fighting against this coronavirus outbreak, which has been quite an issue in a lot of other countries, and certainly Italy has just pretty much shut down. The whole of northern Italy is completely shut down, and that's what they're considering doing to the UK, which means as a mum, I am potentially facing my kids' school closing for 2 weeks, which, quite frankly, brings me out in hives. So my darling, amazing, but very loud children are potentially going to be home for 2 weeks straight, very unexpectedly. So I am batch creating a ton of content today. And regardless of when you're listening to this, or I don't know what coronavirus will be doing by the time you do listen to this, it might have completely gone, who knows. But batch creating content is so valuable, and I've created a whole episode on it. I think it was episode 10, I'm not 100% sure. But go back a few episodes once you've listened to this, if batch creating your content you think would be really, really useful for you. So let's dive into the subject for today, which actually is all about permission. So, I had a little bit of a tough year in 2019. I can't remember if I've spoken about it on the podcast or not, to be perfectly honest with you. But it involved a little bit of illness. It involved a marriage separation and like all that good stuff. Lots of personal growth, lots of things going on. And at the end of the year, I made the decision to stop drinking alcohol. And initially I was like, right, that's it. I'm not going to drink alcohol for the rest of my life. I'm going to be teetotal. That's going to be what I do. And even within the space of probably a week, I changed that to like, okay, I'm not going to drink alcohol for 2020. That's going to be what I do, and just see if it has an effect. Now, to give you some context as to why I made that decision, over the past 2 years, I think it's fair to say that we've, as a nation, actually a whole world, we've become a little bit more conscious, I think, of what we're doing to our bodies, what foods, what substances will do to our bodies, and what we should be avoiding. And we really seem to be on a bit of a mission for optimal health, although certainly the circles I socialise in, the entrepreneurial circles, we all seem to be looking at how we can look after ourselves physically, mentally, emotionally, and food and drink obviously is a big part of that. And so for probably about 2 years, I'd been thinking, do I need to drink? Should I drink? Should I cut alcohol out? And these times would only come about when I usually had one too many glasses of wine, woken up the next day with a bit of a headache, and I was like, why did I do that? I don't want to ruin the whole of my day just because I had too much to drink last night. And so for the past 2 years, I was really scaling back how much I drank anyway. It would be very rare that I would have more than a couple of glasses of wine. And it got to the point where last year so when I'm recording this, so this was 2019, I went 3 weeks without drinking any alcohol at all as a bit of an experiment. And I did feel a little bit better. No huge changes, but I did feel a little bit better. So long story short, I'd really cut back on the drinking, and I didn't have and I'm putting this in air quotes, a drink problem. But what I had realised, and this is where I'm wondering if this will resonate with many different things, not just alcohol, but I realised I drank out of habit more than desire. It wasn't that I was like, oh, do you know what? I really want a beautiful glass of red wine. It was, oh, I'm out with friends, so I'm going to drink alcohol. It wasn't a conscious decision I was making, and that's what I realised. I would go out for dinner, I would automatically have a glass of wine. I would go out with friends, we'd automatically get on the gin and tonics or the champagne. You know, simple things. If I go on holiday, absolutely, I am straight on the champagne. When they come around with a glass of champagne once you're on the plane, I'm like, yes, please. I will have that. Thank you very much. But without even thinking about whether I want it, it's just an association. I go to the airport, I go to the lounge, I have a glass of champagne. I get on the plane, I have a glass of champagne. I meet up with friends. We usually drink Prosecco or a glass of wine or something. It was an association with an environment I would be put in where I would automatically consume an alcoholic drink. Now, me being a complete, I like to dive into my behaviours. I think habits and behaviours are fascinating. And so once I realised that this was actually just a habit and I almost wasn't in control of it, I was like, well, no, none of that. Thank you very much. I'm going to take control of this and I'm not going to do it. And I think what I know actually on reflection, when I look back at the year I had last year, not much of my life seemed like it was in control. My marriage was breaking down, which is not a bad thing. It was absolutely the right thing for both of us, but that was happening. I was trying to figure out loads of things in my business. Lots of things were changing in my business. I had a few health issues with my eyesight, and I was like, oh my gosh, I just felt like I wasn't really in control. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, but I can control this. I can control what I drink. So after Christmas, a couple of days before New Year's Eve, I was like, that's it, I'm not going to drink. And for the first time, I think, since I was legal to drink, I didn't have any alcohol on New Year's Eve. I think I was in bed by 10, to be perfectly honest, with a nice cup of tea. So very rock and roll. And that was it. I was like, yeah, I'm really good with this decision. And the whole of January went, and that didn't really faze me. And it got to the second week in February, and I was due to go for a weekend away with one of my amazing friends. I've known her my entire life. And we were going for a bit of a spa weekend, dinner, and I was just about to say dinner and drinks. It was automatically like, she was like, oh, I'll bring a bottle of bubbly. And I replied to her, I was like, oh, actually, I'm not drinking. I'll bring myself a ginger beer or something. And I remember feeling really sad that I was just like, oh, do you know what? I would love to just chill out with you, glass of champs, relax. That would be lovely. But I was like, but I can't. That's what I was telling myself. I can't. I'm not allowed. I can't do that because I made a commitment that I wasn't going to drink any alcohol for the whole of 2020. And I was like, I'll be damned if I'm going to go back on that. So I was like, no, that's fine. I said I would do this. I need to be strong. Even though it wasn't what I wanted. All I wanted to do was have a glass of wine. I didn't want to go out getting drunk. I didn't want to even in my mind, I was like, do you know what? I don't even necessarily want more than one glass. That would be so lovely. I love champagne. Prosecco champagne, love it. It's delicious. So I was like, oh, that's all I want to do with my friend. But told myself I can't. So how many times have you told yourself that you can't do something? I know a lot of my audience are female, but this definitely goes for men as well. Especially when you're looking at your diet. If you go on a diet, you're like, oh man, I can't have cake. Oh, I can't have bread. Oh, I can't have this. The minute you tell yourself you can't have something, you see it everywhere for a start, and you want it even more because you feel like you're denying yourself. So maybe that resonates for you as well. And then luckily I am in an incredible mastermind, and one of the women who I will link her page actually in the show notes, her name is Rachel, and she is an incredible therapist who works with food addiction. Absolutely amazing woman, and I'm very, very blessed to be in a mastermind with her. And we were having a conversation, just a very, it was our usual monthly mastermind meetup. We were just on the call, having a conversation. We've been talking about funnels and strategies and all that kind of thing. And I don't even remember how we got onto it, but obviously the universe brings us exactly what we need whenever we need it. And we got into a conversation, and I remember saying, oh, well, you know what I'm like, I'm all or nothing. I either go 100 or I don't do it at all. And then I gave her this example about that. I was going on a spa weekend in 2 days' time, and all I wanted to do was have a glass of champs with my friend and just relax and have a really nice weekend. But I felt like I couldn't because I'd committed to not drinking any alcohol for the whole of 2020. And we had a little conversation around it. And then she said something which absolutely physically hit me. It was like an energy bolt. We were talking through Zoom. We weren't even in person, but it was like an energy bolt went through the screen, hit me. And it was like the little voices were like, that's what you needed to hear. And what she said to me was, and I'm going to try and get the roughly the right words, but honestly the emotions went a bit nuts when she said, we talked about why I didn't want to drink, and I didn't have a good reason. This is the thing, my friends, it's not like I was drinking every night. I would go weeks without having any alcohol at all. It wasn't a big part of my life. I didn't have again in air quotes, a drinking problem. I wasn't using it as a crutch for my emotions. I'm all down with my other tools like, journaling and meditation and gym and running and all that kind of stuff to help me with anything emotional. It wasn't being used in a negative way at all. I would only have a drink if I was out, and I just realised that was a bit more of a habit. And so she's like, so why are you doing it? And I was like, I don't know. I just said I would. So now I've said it, I've got to do it. And she said to me, what's holding you back from giving yourself permission to do what you want? Or something along those lines. And man alive, it was like everything it was like this massive weight came off my shoulders, and I was like, oh my goodness, I don't know. And complete honesty, I got really tearful, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to journal on this. And we did. We ended the call. I had a bit of a cry, and I journaled the bejesus out of this situation. And I was like, my gosh, why on earth am I upset about this? What is going on? And I'd be interested to know what you're feeling right now when I say about giving yourself permission to do what it is you want to do. Because when I journaled this, and this is just my experience, it may be something very different for you. When I took out my journal, I was journaling for over an hour, which is a long old session for me to be journaling. And things like judgment came up time and time again. I was judging myself so harshly. I'd heard podcasts and I'd read things and I'd seen articles about, the benefits of being teetotal and things like that, and people sharing how they had a real problem with alcohol and then they cut it out completely. And I just decided, well, that's what I should do. I should cut out alcohol. I didn't have a problem with it. I wasn't using it as a tool, as I said before. There was no issue with me and drinking alcohol. Yet I decided, I was like, right, well, that's what I'm going to do. But it actually came down to the fact I was judging myself so incredibly harshly. I felt out of control in so many other areas of my life that I'd chosen alcohol to be the thing I could control. And I'm going to be completely honest with you, because I always want you to know that I am being 100% honest and transparent about anything. And when I look back all the way back to my teenage years, when I was upset if a boy dumped me, or, the things that seem like a massive crisis when you're 15, or someone was horrible to me, or I was feeling a bit down, I would control food. I would control what I would consume. Not in any way, I was never anorexic, bulimic, and I am not saying that this is advice for anyone with an eating disorder. I never had an eating disorder. I just want to make that really clear. I can't even begin to empathise or reach out to people that are in that situation. But for those of you, if you are thinking actually you do have an eating condition, I am going to link Rachel's details in the show notes. She is the lady who will be able to help you with that. But I would control what I'd eat and drink because I could. So I would, some people comfort eat, don't they? Maybe you're listening to this like, yeah, I've had a bad day, I'm going to open the biscuits. Yep, I've had a bad day, I'm going to open a bottle of wine. With me, I would go the opposite. Something would really upset me, so I would just not have anything because I liked that physical pain of, not pain, that's too strong a word, but that physical discomfort of your stomach being empty, because I was like, yeah, well, that's how I feel. I feel empty, I feel hurt, I feel upset, and actually now I physically feel those emotions as well. I hope that makes sense. So I look back and I was like, oh my gosh, I've always done this. Always done this. The minute something is out of control in my life, I have turned to what I can control. So how does that resonate for you in your life? Can you think of areas in your life where actually if something's going a little bit out of control, maybe it's relationships or the business isn't going the way you want, or something else is not, going the way you thought you would go, or you don't feel that you have control over it, is there another aspect of your life that you then control to the extreme? Because that is what I'd done. I was judging myself so harshly because we got to the end of the year and I had a great, business-wise, I actually had a really good year. I'm incredibly proud of myself for, quite frankly, getting through 2019. I hosted my first live event. I made more profit last year than I'd made the previous year, and profit is king. So actually I had a really great year, but it didn't live up to what I thought it was going to be. So there were many, many things, and obviously, I was separating from my husband, and I was worried about the kids, and what was our living situation going to be, all these things. I didn't feel like I had control, so this is where I turned to. So I was judging myself very harshly. And I just want to sort of wrap this up and sort of go back to the main thing that Rachel said to me that really pulled this out of me, was about permission. Giving myself permission to have a glass of wine if I really wanted it. To have that permission to consciously make a choice for myself. And that's what it was all about. So that weekend, I messaged my friend after I'd done this journey. I was like, oh my gosh, this is why I made that commitment. There was never any real reason for me to stop drinking alcohol for the whole of 2020. I just decided that that's what I wanted to do. Oh, and that was another thing. And this may come up if you decide to journal on this as well. I had a real attachment to struggle, which is very annoying because I honestly thought I'd worked through this. These limiting beliefs are a pain in the ass. They will come up time and time again, even when you think you've cleared them, or you may have cleared them in one aspect of your life, and they'll show up in another part of it. It's like new level, new devil. The next time you in your business, when you get to that next stage, you're like, oh, something's holding me back. And you're like, oh man, it's that same belief, which ultimately, for me, essentially, and for many people that I coach, comes down to the fear of not being good enough. Oh, I'm just not being good enough. I'm not doing enough. So I've lost my train of thought a little bit, but it all came down to that. So one of the things that really came out is I still had this attachment to struggle. I had to make things hard for myself. I think I'd gone into Christmas and the New Year thinking, okay, do you know what? 2020 is going to be great. It's going to be really good. My ex-husband and I had kind of worked a few things out. The business was going really well. I had a good plan, blah, 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 blah. I was like, right, 2020 is going to be really good. And it's almost like I sabotaged that and went, well, I've got to make something difficult. So I then was like, right, well, I won't drink alcohol because that'll be something I have to struggle with and I have to make a big thing about. And so the attachment struggle is real. And the interesting thing is I then messaged my friend after having a conversation with Rachel, and I was like, actually, I am going to have a glass of Prosecco. I'll bring a bottle with me. And she was like, oh, thank goodness. Because my friend does love a drink. I love her. And she was like, oh, thank goodness. Okay. But the interesting thing is I drank 3 glasses of Prosecco that weekend. And it was over the whole weekend. I think it was about 6 or 7 hours. And I had no negative effects of it. I didn't feel groggy the next day. It was lovely. It was just with dinner and just chatting. And we had the most amazing weekend. And I came back feeling so relaxed, so happy. And it was just lush. It was just so, so nice. And here's the funny thing. So I'd then given myself permission. I was like, okay, if I want to have a drink, I will have a drink. I didn't have a drink for another month. And in fact, the next time I had a drink was at the same spa location with some friends over the weekend that's just gone. And again, that was just a couple of glasses of Prosecco. And I was like, okay, I don't want any more. That's fine. I'm done. I'll stick with my tea now. But giving myself that permission has lifted such a weight off my shoulders, because it is no longer this thing I have to think about all the time. Like, oh, I'm going out. Oh, I'd love to have a glass of wine, but I can't. And that's the thing. It wasn't that I didn't want to. It was just I was telling myself I can't, because I'd put this restriction on myself. Now, obviously I've talked about alcohol. I just want to segue, like, if you do find that you turn to alcohol as an emotional crutch, if you turn to alcohol very regularly, if it is affecting your lifestyle, then of course seek help, speak to someone, and and make the adjustments you feel are necessary. That wasn't my situation. I would go weeks without drinking and it wasn't a big thing, and if I do have a drink, it's a couple of glasses of wine and I'm done, and then I won't have anything for weeks on end. So the interesting thing was, once you give yourself permission, anything is possible. And sometimes we are so hard on ourselves. And I want to take this back to business, because this is probably why you're listening to this podcast. You have a business or you're starting a business. When you look at your business, what are you making hard for yourself? What are you not giving yourself permission to do? There will be so many things when I see this all the time. I see it in my Focused and Fearless members when they start working with me. I've seen it with private clients. And they're just not allowing themselves to be the person they want to be, to do the things that they need to do to grow their business, because they're holding themselves back for a reason. Now, my reasons were attachment to struggle. They were judgment. I was judging myself incredibly harshly. I was judging myself against others who are 5, 6, 7 years ahead of me, business-wise. And that's just crazy. But the thing is, the interesting thing is, look at all of your life. I always say you need to take a very holistic approach to your business, and awareness is a ninja skill. Oh my gosh, awareness. Once you have awareness of how you're showing up, the person you're being, the way it's impacting your business, my goodness, it's going to be a game changer for you, because once you're aware, then you can adjust and you can make those improvements and you can grow and you can evolve. So that was my little share. And this is the interesting thing, is obviously I'd spoken about it on Instagram, and that was another thing. I was like, oh, what are people going to think of me if I go back on this? What are people going to think of me if they see me on my Instagram stories drinking champagne when I get on the plane? They're going to judge me. Back to that lovely judgment again. They're going to judge me because I didn't do what I said I was going to do. And quite frankly, I've now got to the point, I'm recording this several weeks, or actually nearly a month after this has happened, because I really needed to get my head straight around it. Because I also did, just to be completely clear, I did do a lot of diving into it. I was like, is this habit, blah, blah, blah. Am I just, resorting to my old ways of being? Am I being the person I want to be? I did do all that. I went through all of that in the journaling. And it wasn't anything about me resorting to old ways of being. My old ways of being would drink unconsciously. I would drink because I was at my parents'. I would drink because I was out with friends. Whereas now I'm very much like, do I want to have a glass of wine? Yes or no? And I have the strength to make that decision, even though I do have a lot of friends who would maybe look at me slightly like, oh, you're not drinking. But that's for, the people. That happens sometimes when they're like, oh, that's different to my world, and it's, odd and uncomfortable. But that's probably for another podcast episode. But I want you to look at the takeaway I want you to get from this episode. The reason I shared this is because we are always going to be judged as entrepreneurs. It's going to happen. The more you go out there, the more you put yourself out there, the braver you are, you're going to get judged. And I want you to look at how much you judge others. Because if you judge others harshly, I would bet the bottom dollar that you judge yourself even harder. Okay, so what are you judging yourself on? And these are some things you can journal on. Like, what are you judging yourself on? Why are you holding yourself back? What in your business and your life are you not giving yourself permission to do? For what, and what is the reason? So for me, it was making that crazy commitment. It wasn't a crazy commitment. In fact, I do believe everything happens for a reason. The whole life happens for you, not to you. 100% believe that. And I think I needed to make that decision so that it would lead me to having that conversation with Rachel, so she would help me lift a whole other layer of crap that I was holding on to, about judging myself, about doing the right thing, in inverted commas. How often are you trying to do the right thing, and actually it's not what lights you up, it's not what feels good to you? And again, I actually made some notes here. I'd made alcohol bad, in inverted commas. And there is no good or bad. For me, a glass of wine was just a glass of wine. There was no good or bad. I'd made it this bad thing, and I was trying to do everything good. I was trying to do everything right. And you know what? It's just life's for living. And we are holding ourselves back and making things so much more complicated for ourselves in our businesses, in our lives, because we're always trying to maybe keep up with the Joneses, because we're worried of being judged. And I'm just here to kind of give you a hug through the speaker, whatever you're listening this to. If this has resonated with you, if you can identify maybe in your mind as you're thinking, listening to this, things where you're holding yourself back, where you're sabotaging, where you're not giving yourself that permission. Oh my gosh, my darling, just let it go. Get that journal out, go for a run, meditate, whatever you do to help clear your head and kind of process these things, just let it go. Because once you do, it's not going to become this big thing. If you are scared about getting yourself out there on social media, if you are afraid of going out and networking, if you are afraid of asking for the sale, this is something we've been working on in Focused and Fearless, which is my membership. We've been talking about sales and asking for that sale, asking for the money. It terrifies people because they haven't given themselves the permission to receive that money. They haven't given themselves permission to be hugely abundant and successful. So I'm going to wrap this up because I'm very conscious this has gone on for nearly half an hour. And I do like to keep my episodes fairly succinct. So let me know. Come and have a chat with me on Instagram, or come into my free Facebook group, Freedom from One to One. Come and have a chat with me. Let me know if this resonated. I'd love to know your feedback. I always love having a chat with you after the podcast episodes. So let me know if this resonated, where it's maybe affected you in your life, and where you can start to change that. Where you can start being a bit kinder to yourself and giving yourself permission to do what it is that you need to do, that you want to do, whether it be in your business or your life. All right, my darlings, I am going to wrap this one up here. There's just something else came into my mind about fun and enjoyment, but you know what? That's for another podcast episode. I'm going to wrap this one up here. Have the most amazing day, and I will see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to the Focused and Fearless podcast. If you'd like to continue the conversation or have a question that you would like answered in an upcoming episode, head over to Instagram and connect with me at Heather Angel Coaching. If you enjoy this podcast, please share your thoughts in a review on iTunes. I truly value your feedback and I take the time to read every single review. Have a beautiful week, and I'll see you in the next episode.